murder, rape, torture, acts of terror. These are some of the worst offenses a person can commit. For those who are sentenced, some will receive the death penalty. However, there are those who say that the death penalty is too harsh, or that the punishment doesn't fit the crime. In many cases, the punishment does fit the crime. Yet many violent criminals will live out their lives in prison with no other consequences for their heinous acts. For these criminals, the death penalty is the only option. It is the best form of restitution, it prevents dangerous offenders from getting free, and it will create less of a financial burden onto the justice system. Just as the old adage states, the punishment must fit the crime. Dawn Garvin was a young wife of a lawyer who lived only 4 miles from her parents. When her husband had to travel for work, he would call to let Dawn know that he had arrived safely. One night, he called multiple times, and upon receiving no answer, he called her father and asked him to go over and check on her. What her father found there will haunt him for the rest of his life. He discovered his daughter's lifeless body. When police investigated, they discovered not only had she been murdered, but she'd also been raped and tortured for nearly 6 hours. For Dawn Garvin's husband, parents, and brother, her loss left a hole that will never heal. She is dead, and she will never come back. No one can ever truly get over the loss of a loved one. They'll always have a gaping void in their souls where that person was meant to be. Healing can be possible, though. For the families who have had their loved ones taken from them, they can find healing through justice. Dawn's family can find peace, knowing that her rapist, torturer, and murderer has been sentenced to death. It's not about closure, Dawn's mother stated. His death won't bring closure, but it will bring justice for Dawn. In the United States, it is said that every person who commits a crime will be punished to the fullest extent of the law. In 18 states, the fullest extent includes the death penalty. Laws are created for a reason. Many lawmakers and regular everyday people devoted their prime years to making sure these laws were passed. To ignore them is to waste them, and is disrespectful to the memory of those who dedicated their lives for them. By acknowledging these laws and punishing these criminals the way they deserve, families like Dawn's can have their prayers answered. People would like to believe that everyone has the potential to change. Surely those who've gone to prison will have learned their lesson, right? Haven't they paid for their crimes? Most would say yes, but statistics says no. In a study conducted by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 71% of violent offenders will re-offend within 5 years. Of these 71%, 24% will commit a crime of equal or lesser violence, and the other 47% will escalate in violence. With over half of violent offenders going free, the world has been exposed to the horrors these criminals intend to commit. Sean Corbally was a convicted rapist who had managed to get out of prison in 11 years, despite being given a 40-year sentence for kidnap and rape. He was released in February, and by May, he had already attacked 2 different women. When asked if he felt remorse for his actions, he replied that the whole time he was in prison, getting free and continuing to hurt other people. Severe diseases that make them unable to integrate back into normal society without taking lives or harming themselves or others. These diseases include mental issues such as schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, sociopathy, and antisocial personality disorder, otherwise known as psychopathy. Untreated, these diseases can cause people to lose a sense of reality and act out in unspeakable ways. People such as Jeffrey Dahmer, Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, and Eileen Wuornos all had serious mental disorders. Although having a mental disorder doesn't lead people to be violent, these individuals committed multiple brutal acts against hundreds of people. The only option is to sentence them to death to give justice to the families of their victims. While they were free, they committed terrible acts of violence and destroyed people's lives. If they were free, they would only strike again. These violent criminals cannot be trusted to go free, as statistics and personal accounts undoubtedly show. Money makes the world go round, and saving money is something that everyone is interested in. The financial strain of keeping violent criminals alive has been around for years, but has only recently made a real impact due to the fact that nearly 12% of all violent criminals are above the 50 years of age. NBC News has reported that by the year 2030, there will be upward of 400,000 elderly prisoners, which will make up nearly a third of the penal population. Keeping prisoners alive is costly, And as they continue to grow older, their health declines and their care costs only continue to increase. Nearly 16 billion taxpayer dollars are used to keep elderly patients alive in the span of a single year. This financial strain is only going to increase as more people get lifelong sentences or continue to repeat their offenses so often that they end up dying in prison. If these violent prisoners were sentenced to death instead of lifelong sentences, less money would need to be spent keeping them alive. Another source of the strain of the justice system is the time and effort that has to be devoted to those who work in the prison systems across the country. Hiring and training new corrections officers is a costly business. It's a waste of resources for people to continually retrain new employees when they could be improving the lives of the nonviolent inmates. Supervisors could be planning activities that educate and improve prisoners' lives in prison, but instead must waste their efforts on trying to hire, train, and educate new people. Prisoners in similar facilities also have a high turnover rate. It's hard for people to work in such a difficult environment for prolonged amounts of time. The stress and overall poor quality of life many guards see will cause various issues in them, such as anxiety, depression, and acute stress disorder, causing them to quit soon after hiring. Due to the high turnover rate, many prisoners are understaffed and in a constant state of hiring. With less prisoners around, the job would be less stressful, employees would be able to stay on longer, and the money saved could go toward other worthwhile government systems, such as education. Due to the vicious nature of violent criminals' acts, the only thing that makes financial sense, is morally responsible, and restores balance back to the world, is sentence them to the death penalty. We can do so by making sure to vote in favor of it whenever possible. A third of people who are sentenced to death will never actually be put to death. This is due to people getting convictions overturned and due to the lack of involvement from surrounding communities. When you hear a story of a gruesome murder on the news and they mention the killer has been sentenced to death, don't just brush it off and think about how sad it is in passing. Get justice for those involved. Get involved. Google upcoming votes in your area and inform yourself to any petitions you can sign to help push this cause forward. Signing these petitions and voting for the death penalty for violent offenders will save lives and make the world a better place, a place you want to live in.